Welcome to Behind the Screen. I'm Tim Jackson, in a show produced by students at the New England Institute of Art. Our first show of fall 2009. And there are the students out there. Can we hear those voices, please?
Hello.
There we go. All right. And we actually have a really, really special show today. Johnny, Hickey, and Brendan Brennan from a new film called The Oxy-morons, which was shot in Charlestown, about the Oxycontin trade in Charlestown. This is a close to the bone movie and a really special piece of work. So we're really lucky to have you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. It's great. So let's just start with why you made the movie and what it's about, because I think that's half the.
Well, why I made the movie, when I was 13, they came to Boston. It was the first big film thing in Charlestown. They never did anything in Charlestown. They actually held us here at this school in the cafeteria as extras. And it was about busing. It was called Common Ground. And I was so overwhelmed with the whole movie industry and the TV, and I wanted to be an actor. So every day I played the best friend of the son who was he had like an under 5, played Jane Curtin's son. And every day they would leave in this van and go off somewhere else, off set, and I would come back here and eat a bologna sandwich with the rest of the extras. So one day I said, you know what, I want to know where they're going, and I snuck in the van with them, ended up at another location where we were eating real catering, and I was like, this is great, like this is what I want to do the rest of my life, until of course a PA or someone figured out, who is this young child here and what is he doing here, and they got me back to my mom. Living in Charlestown, Mass, which a lot of people don't know, more bank robbers than anywhere else in the country. As of right now, it has a 99% higher opiate-related crime and death than anywhere else in the country. And you fall into these codes and rules here in Charlestown that if a guy comes home from Harvard with a degree, nobody gives a crap. And if a guy comes home from doing a prison sentence and stabbed 20 people or murdered someone, he's a glorified hero. So as a child, you're brought up to believe that this is the way it's supposed to be and this is what you should do. So what happened after I was 13 was I fell into the adolescence of Charlestown, and it totally, going to prison. I was in prison for 3 years. I escaped, and all these things deterred me from ever believing I could follow my dream of making a movie.
And you wrote the script while you were in prison, is that right?
I came up with the idea while I was in prison. I was in prison in 2001 when the towers went down. A friend of mine came in. There was Oxycontins coming into the jail through a prison guard. He ended up ODing on the stash and causing this huge array of things. And I said, geez, if there was ever a movie that no one's done yet, everyone's done a movie on every drug you could think of except for Oxycontin. I said, I want to do this. But it was just an idea at that point in time. Little notes, idea. I still had 2 years left in my prison sentence. 2003, I get out. I fall right back into the same stuff, committing crimes, doing pharmacy things, dealing with Oxycontin, drugs, counterfeit money, possession of firearm, all this crazy stuff. And it led me to being thrown from an 80-foot cliff in Quincy. I was attacked by 15 kids, street stuff, won't get into it too much, and I woke up 7 days later in a coma with a separated pelvic bone, dislocated hip, torn urethra, and my bladder exploded, being told I would never walk again, probably never have children, be peeing in a bag the rest of my life, and that was it. That was going to be my life. I had horrible nightmares while I was in prison. I mean, if you believe in God or whatever you believe in, that's your choice, but I had demons visiting me and maybe it was the drugs, who knows. But at that point in time, I said, I'm done. So I made them take me off the morphine, and I went cold turkey in the hospital, and the doctors thought I was insane and actually tried forcing me to take opiates because of the pain, because they thought I was delusional. And I really just said, look, if you keep me on these drugs, you're going to boot me out of here in 2 months when I heal up and you're ready to send me home, and I'm going to be a heroin addict, either dead or in jail on the street. And one doctor, Mike Nerney, the greatest guy I ever met, he agreed with me, and he took me off all the narcotics. And I went into drug court. I was in drug court at the time, had 5 years hanging over my head. And when I went in with the letter stating that I went cold turkey with all these injuries, and that if anyone had an excuse to use these drugs, it was me. The judge wiped out everything. He said, I don't know why I'm doing this, and he's looking at all the people that are there for a dirty urine, asked them what their excuse is. He goes, but I'm going to let you go today. He goes, I think you're done. I think you're finished. And at that point in time, I was still in the wheelchair, and I wanted to write the story. I was like, I got to do this. I got to do this. But, you know, I had so much other stuff in my life that I had to get together. I had to get into college, get a degree. I had to get a job, you know, because I got to get out of street life. You have to get out of it. If not, you're going to get sucked right back in. So I said, how can a guy like me from Boston get into Hollywood? You can't go to these casting companies where they cast you as extras or under fives. I don't care if I got every under five gig in the city. It wouldn't bring me nowhere. So I decided to get a job bouncing at the Comedy Connection because I knew there were comedians at the Comedy Connection that were in movies and TV shows, and I'm very good at networking.
So you went to do that with the intention of meeting the people to make the connection for you to do the thing that you wanted to do when you were 13 years old, and these other things that paid off, that didn't end your life.
Absolutely.
Gave you this new opportunity. You put two and two together and started making the plans. Very cool. Nice.
So at that point in time, I go to Boston Medical, and by the grace of God, they took the catheter out and my urethra had healed. 7 doctors at Boston Medical Center still can't explain. My pelvic bone widened so much, they couldn't wire it back together because of the infections. The metal that they would use to wire it together would cause the white, all this, to attack it as a foreign substance in my body, so it was a too high a risk. So they said my pelvic bone would heal like this, and at a minimum I would walk on stilts or be in a wheelchair. And I said, mind over matter, I'm not doing it. Going to Boston Medical Center, my urethra heals, and I'm walking. And they do an x-ray, and my pelvic bone is back to the way it was when I was born as a kid.
So is this all in the movie?
This isn't in the movie. This is all the story behind this. I couldn't fit all of this in the movie if I tried.
But the movie script is based on
this stuff.
Everything.
I mean, the hospital stuff is in there, but the injuries and all that stuff isn't in there because it was just way too much. Yeah. My main concern with the script in the movie was to get the message out there that, one, Oxycontin is heroin, which a lot of people, to their ignorance, don't know. And if he does 2 Oxycontin 80s right now, because he's prescribed them because they gave them to him for a broken hip or a knee, and I shot 2 bags of heroin with a syringe, and we had a urine tomorrow for a job or probation, they wouldn't know that he did 2 Oxycontins and I did 2 bags of heroin. We would just test positively high for opiates.
And this is still a huge problem in Charlestown.
Huge problem in Charlestown. If you walk on the street, they look like zombies.
Yeah, we can go out there right now.
We can go out there right now.
So, Brendan, this is asking you, there's no romance to this story. As a lot of Charlestown's things can sort of be romanticized, even though we know it's violent and it doesn't pay off. This takes it to a horror film.
No, yeah, it brings this film. I'm so lucky to be attached to it, but this film brought it to another level. Talking about it and meetings and all that stuff is great. Whatever works for you. But this film is going to come across, and that's why we were so lucky to have Peter Looney and Charlestown Against Drugs on board to get the message across. And this film, in my mind, and then John as well, and anyone who was attached to the film, whether it was from crew to actors up, can really contest to the fact that this is going to bring a different light to it, that it's not, this ain't the early 90s kind of like Ben Affleck's movie where you're robbing banks and everybody's driving big Cadillacs and making money.
Or Scarface, where you're dying with the funny cocaine on your nose and a hail of gunfire, but you're not learning a thing.
This isn't, those days of Charlestown are pretty much over and done, and basically throughout the country, over and done.
And so for your background, you guys have known each other your whole lives. This is your first film, is that
My
right?
first film, yes.
Yeah, Brendan actually ended up in the film in a very ironic way. Brendan is a generation ahead of me. David Burns, who plays my brother in the film, he was on The Real World and MTV. He was one of the few kids like us to escape Charlestown. He was an awesome tennis player. He ended up leaving Charlestown, but very lucky. He went to VMI, ended up on MTV's Real World. He's been traveling the world ever since doing crazy things.
A tennis scholarship. A kid from the projects getting a tennis scholarship to a military school. I mean,